The Marvel Cinematic Universe is, without a doubt, the franchise I have followed most prominently in my life. I became a fan way back when The Avengers came out in 2012 and stayed so passionate due to its continued fantastical, large-scale storytelling coupled with the heart of its characters. For a long time, I eagerly awaited each new installment. I would get massively excited when there'd be new announcements, new trailers, hell, even press, all leading up to the night where I finally got to see the next chapter of the franchise. This hype was built due to the quality of the movies being consistent for the most part, and their characters and storylines remaining engaging, entertaining, and heartfelt all at the same time. Maybe it's partially to do with the fact that I'm getting older, but that excitement has been missing lately, and the thrill of a new Marvel project has been lessened, sometimes quite significantly. And clearly, I'm not alone in this thought process. To an extent, I think it's becoming kind of a trend to hate on Marvel projects. However, even I can't deny that something has changed, and I'm starting to agree with a lot of the comments that people are making about their more recent releases. With the quality of each project feeling increasingly lazy or clunky or rushed, and expectations getting kind of lower, it's clear to me that a few things have gone missing from the MCU, and that's what I want to talk about here. So I've come up with a few points that I think accurately portray what has happened to the MCU as a whole, so let's start with the event. Everybody is well aware that Marvel pumps out a lot more content than they used to, meaning it's not as big of a deal when they put something new out anymore. When a new Marvel project comes out, it doesn't feel like the event that it used to. The oversaturation of content has meant that audiences are bombarded with Marvel all the time. In Phase 3, for example, it was only 2 to 3 Marvel movies a year, so the wait and the hype was stretched out. As well as that, 2 to 3 movies a year is manageable for the average moviegoer, as opposed to 3 to 4 movies and 5 shows a year. A few years ago, when you walked into a cinema and sat down, the sound of the Marvel Studios intro starting built up hype because it came once every few months or so, and as a fan, to await a new Marvel movie's release and have it finally arrive was exhilarating. The wait between movies gave the community enough time to speculate and theorize, try to figure out how all of these pieces introduced slowly and steadily all fit together. But now with all of this content being released so quickly, it makes it difficult to keep up, as well as build up anticipation for a new Marvel project, because the novelty is being lost, which I think the shows definitely don't help. That excitement that I mentioned when the intro starts isn't there anymore because I hear it every week on Disney Plus in the new 6-part episode event. Maybe this extreme pace of content wouldn't be as problematic if the oversaturation of it wasn't affecting the quality as much. But comparing some of the projects in Phase 4 to projects in the previous phases, it becomes clear as day that the way these are being pushed out so swiftly is meaning not enough time is spent on them to make sure they are as good as possible. John Campion mentioned something recently on his show that I strongly agree with. There was a steady run from, say, 2014 to 2018, where Marvel released hit after hit, but in the last 2 years, it's less common, for me at least, that I get something that I genuinely consider to be brilliant. In Phase 3, the majority of projects released I properly loved, but in Phase 4, there's really only a few notable brilliant projects in my opinion. It's clear that the writing is more rushed than it used to be, and the CGI is shocking, and I don't even blame the artists for that. In the last year or so, there's been frequent reports of them being forced to work such long hours and have such a large amount of content to work with in such a short amount of time that there's even been reports of them sleeping in office because they don't have time to go home and having panic attacks. Just recently, longtime higher up at Marvel Studios Victoria Alonso was fired for reasons that weren't clarified to the public, but people are assuming it has something to do with that. These factors are severely affecting the quality of the project, and the consistency in quality is what made Marvel releases feel like an event. Direction. This is another common one that I've seen and honestly agree with very strongly, so I'll just briefly explain what I mean. Leading up to Avengers Infinity War, every movie, in one way or another, felt as though it served a purpose and brought characters to a certain point that led to their role in Infinity War. Civil War tore the Avengers apart, making them completely unprepared to fight Thanos, and even had one half of them becoming fugitives. Doctor Strange saw the introduction of the Time Stone, making him a key player in Infinity War. The Guardians of the Galaxy had the Power Stone, as well as two of Thanos' daughters for him to chase, dragging them into the fight. Ragnarok took everything away from Thor, and by the end of the movie, had him unknowingly travelling with an Infinity Stone, leading to Thanos slaughtering half of his people. And Black Panther introduced Wakanda as a vital ally to hold Thanos off for as long as they could. The point is that every movie in Phase 3 felt like it was naturally leading towards a common enemy. Kevin Feige has said that Phase 4 is about new beginnings and the introduction of new characters, and that's all well and good, but hardly any of them feel connected in any way. Eternals introduced the Celestials, and nobody has mentioned the giant Celestial that popped out of the Earth's core at the end, and even so, what does that have to do with where we're headed, which is the multiverse saga and the Kang Dynasty? Black Widow is a movie that was made so late that the character had already died 2 movies prior, meaning the only purpose the movie served was to introduce some side characters, really. Characters like Moon Knight and She-Hulk just got started, and for Moon Knight in particular, it still feels like he has a long way to go before he can join the big leagues like the Avengers. And for Thor, a character who basically got turned into a parody of his former self in Love and Thunder, I have no idea where the end of that movie places him in terms of his role going forward. With every storyline going in such a different direction, and with so many ongoing plot threads and character arcs, it makes it difficult to see how they could all plausibly converge for the culmination of the multiverse saga. Also, the sheer number of new characters that they have already introduced and will continue to introduce is a lot to keep up with and a lot to converge. On top of the large existing cast of the MCU, Phase 4 alone introduced Yelena, Red Guardian, Shang-Chi, The Eternals, Black Knight, America Chavez, Mighty Thor, Namor, Ironheart, Wiccan and Speed, Adult Monica, Agatha Harkness, US Agent, Sylvie, Kate Bishop, Echo, Moon Knight, Scarlet Scarab, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, Daredevil, Elsa Bloodstone, the Werewolf, and Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. And before Kang Dynasty, they are at least introducing Adam Warlock, Blade, Deadpool, Wolverine, Punisher, the Thunderbolts, and the Fantastic Four. All of these characters seem to be going in completely different directions, where if you look at the Infinity Saga, every character in it had a link to either Thanos or one of the Infinity Stones, and so they naturally fit into that conclusion. Now, I'm not expecting all of these characters to be in the next 2 Avengers movies, but even so, I don't know where they're going to find time to flesh out all of them and give them their own interesting and ultimately satisfying arcs and emotional depth, and still expect audiences to be able to keep up and invest in them, which leads me perfectly into my third point. Emotional investment. The thing that makes the MCU work, above all else, for me at least, is the emotional investment that I have in its core characters. This comes directly through great writing, great directing, and great performances. To put it simply, there is a reason audiences reacted this way when Robert Downey Jr.'s signature came up in the credits of Endgame. Audiences grew to love Tony Stark because Iron Man was cool, but Tony was so much more intriguing. He had a satisfying 11-year arc, which while it of course had all of the Marvel spectacle, there was a genuine human at the core of it. Even in Phase 1, we got to watch him go from being a selfish, arrogant playboy to being willing to sacrifice his own life to save the planet. Even in his first movie, we get to see a realistic character growth. His worldviews are challenged when he sees the weapons he's created in the hands of terrorists, which is why he ultimately shuts down weapon production and dedicates himself to a more noble cause. As a result of the time and care that was put into his character, this arc led to a satisfying conclusion, and those crowd-pleasing moments from Endgame were so impactful because they felt earned. Obviously, I'm not expecting this to be a possibility for every character, there's too many of them to do that with, but people need to care about each one of them in order for any of their payoff moments to be as earned and as impactful as Tony Stark snapping his fingers from Endgame, or Captain America wielding Mjolnir. We have 2 massive Avengers movies coming up, and the majority of the cast will probably be new characters that we've only just been introduced to. Because the quality of the writing has dropped so much, that investment that we have in, say, the original Guardians of the Galaxy, for instance, isn't there. Hardly any of these new characters have as much emotional depth as characters in the Infinity Saga, meaning by the time we get to the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, it makes it really difficult to see how those big moments that they'll inevitably end up having can feel as earned. Other than Peter Parker in No Way Home and Shuri in Wakanda Forever, the rush of the writing has meant that none of the emotional payoffs have really impacted me all that much. This is no fault of the actors playing the characters. Florence Pugh is a phenomenal actor, she's the best part of Black Widow in my opinion, but did anyone really care for Yelena's role in Hawkeye? What about Jane's death in Love and Thunder? Sure, it was sad, but on the same level as Yondu in Guardians 2? I don't think so. I mean, I don't even really care that there's an Echo spin-off show coming. Her character was not intriguing in Hawkeye, and the only reason I'm really looking forward to it is because Kingpin is involved. To wrap up an entire saga this quickly and have only just met most of the major players in it and not feel that strongly about them feels rushed. Additionally, like I said, the connective tissue is missing. They're all going in such different directions, which I'm worried will lead to their eventual team-up feeling forced. I don't know how they're going to find time to build up these new characters enough and give them enough screen time before the major conclusive event. Surely there's too many of them to all be able to show up in enough projects to evolve as characters and develop that same connection that we had to the original 6. Between now and the Kang Dynasty, they'll have to take their time developing these characters to a point where audiences become attached before they can rival the impact of Infinity War and Endgame, which led to their success. I wanted to finish on a positive note because this is my favourite franchise, so I'm now going to talk about some of the reasons why I'm optimistic for the future of the MCU. Phase 5, even though it got off to an interesting start, I'm genuinely quite excited for a lot of these projects, especially because it feels like we're getting a lot more direction. Guardians 3 looks great so far, and the script has been done for years, so I have faith in that movie, and especially in James Gunn. I mean, the man made one Suicide Squad movie, and now he's the co-CEO of DC Studios. Loki was an obvious highlight of Phase 4, so it follows that I would be excited for Season 2. Secret Invasion looks promising so far. It's giving off similar tones to The Winter Soldier, which is one of, if not my favourite Marvel movie, and just look at that cast. Captain America New World Order I'm very excited about because it's said to be a proper political thriller, which again, much like The Winter Soldier, and Daredevil Born Again is so exciting to me since the Netflix show is my favourite thing Marvel's ever done, and while certain things have me concerned, I am still cautiously optimistic, with other things making me extremely hyped. One thing I mentioned at the start of the video was the oversaturation of Marvel content, which was also affecting the quality, and this is likely a result of recently fired Disney CEO Bob Chapek's mandate for maximum content production to boost revenue as well as subscriptions for Disney+. Chapek's mandate meant that Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige hasn't had as much time to work on each project. He's now having to pick and choose which ones he prioritizes. Chapek massively divided the Disney company by limiting the control of the creators, you know, the ones that make you successful products, and giving more control to his corporate financial buddies. However, like I said, he was recently fired and replaced with Bob Iger, who was CEO before Chapek and actually acquired Marvel Studios in the first place. His mandate was to let the creators lead, and as such did not interfere too much in their decision making. Therefore, with this change in leadership, the creators are now back in control and they are taking a quality over quantity approach. Part of this will involve the slowing down of the release of each Marvel project to ensure each one is as good as they can be. The only definite Disney Plus releases for this year are Secret Invasion and Loki Season 2, which honestly is no bad thing in my eyes. The Marvels just got delayed from July to November, which honestly I don't see as any reason for concern, and Blade got pushed from November 2023 to September of 2024. The rest of the schedule will also most likely suffer delays, but honestly, I don't mind. I want these projects to be great, and what I'm hoping this means is that they won't be rushed and the quality of the writing will start to get better again. In fact, with this news, I'm a lot more excited for the future, and I genuinely believe this is a sign that we're returning to the glory days, as it were. God, I hope this section doesn't age poorly. Thank you for watching. This is the first video essay I've ever made, so apologies if it seemed like I was rambling a bit. This is a format that I've been thinking of giving a go for a while, since I deeply enjoy watching other video essays and movie commentary videos like this, and wanted to try it out myself. With that in mind, I want to mention some of the channels that motivated me to make this at all, and I highly recommend you go check them out. Brown Table, High Top Films, Cosmonaut Variety Hour, Real Rejects, Captain Midnight, and Filmento. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. See you later.